This evening, we present the panel, Consumer Viewing Habits, as part of our Filmmaking 2.0 Day, sponsored by Panasonic. The moderator for this discussion will be Lance Weiler, director of The Last Broadcast and Head Trauma. He is joined by Andrew Barron of Rocketboom, Arin Crumley and Susan Buse, directors of Four-Eyed Monsters, and Brett Gaylor, creator of OpenSourceCinema.org. Please give all our panelists a warm welcome.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming today. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about viewing habits. In terms of making films, a lot of the times what ends up happening is people kind of think about the audience last. They think about the viewers last. They just assume that because they make films, there's probably people out there that are just like them, that are going to like the movies. And so what we wanted to do is kind of break down the process. The reason that we have this group of panelists here today is they represent a wide range of different disciplines and some fascinating projects. It ranges from Andrew, who's doing short form stuff, to Arin and Susan, who've done very innovative things around fictional work, to Brett, who has been doing some really interesting things around remix documentary work. So what we wanted to do, and you'll see here on the screen, this is kind of an experiment. There's actually a number that you can text. It's hard to read there. It's if you, at any point, if you use your mobile phone and do @festmob and text it to 25622, that's 25622, it'll actually come up on the screen here. So what we wanted to try to do is if anybody had any questions or anything that they were interested in, we would kind of try to get some viewer participation throughout the course. I ask you to try to refrain from mocking us or anything profane, but feel free, because we'll reference it from time to time. See? There we go. Okay. I think to kick things off, viewing habits are changing. Media consumption is changing. A recent New York Times ComScore said that 75% of the internet, basically 75% of internet in the US now watch an average of 3 hours of video online. The average viewing of video is 2.7 minutes, and 2.4 billion of that came from YouTube alone. So I think what we want to kind of talk about today is kind of breaking down some of the ideas of what viewership is, how it's affected the work of the people who are up here, how it impacts the way that they make the work that they make, potential revenue streams that it creates in terms of ways that you can harness the assistance of that audience or those viewers, and then also potentially the pros and cons of it, what negative things they've seen from the things that they've tried. So if we could start with Andrew, I'd like to have each of you just kind of do a brief introduction around yourself, and then we'll kind of go into some general questions.
Okay, sure. Hi, my name's Andrew Barron. I have this website called Rocketboom. We've been doing it for a few years. It's just a few of us that put together a daily newscast. It's just about 3 or 4 minutes long per day. And people come and watch it on our website here, or we distribute it on all different kinds of platforms, on mobile and on YouTube-like sites, and HD. We also have it on TiVo, etc., iTunes, all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's about it.
Arin, Susan?
Okay, well, Susan and I did a film called Four-Eyed Monsters, and it's an autobiographical film that went to a bunch of film festivals, and then we created a video podcast around it, and then we did a DIY theatrical release and a internet release, selling it off the internet on DVD as well as downloads, and providing sponsorship funded free screenings of the film on the internet. Susan, do you want to explain what the film's about?
Okay. The film is about how Arin and I met and started communicating only through artistic mediums. So it's also about using art and the internet to get to know someone.
Hi, my name is Brett Gaylor, And I've been making a documentary film about copyright and culture for a couple of years. It's a feature doc that I'm doing with the NFB, which is the National Film Board of Canada, and it's sort of examining the question of what happens to our culture if we continue to lock up our ideas and don't allow them to spread. And a lot of the content of the film was focused on people that were doing this kind of remix work. They were appropriating different bits of their culture and remixing them and being called criminals for this, or they were trading songs online and were being called criminals for this. And I always kind of felt that I wanted to somehow reflect that in the way that I made the film, so that kind of the form of the film spoke somehow to the content of it. And so what I wanted to do was to somehow make the film open source, and I kind of took a cue from open source software, which is sort of like two things for me. That what open source means is that you can see the production of how the film's made, so that you open that up, people can see kind of the source elements, but that also people can change it if they want to. They can improve upon it. So I launched a website called opensourcecinema.org, and basically kind of challenged the community that I would place all of my footage that I shot for the film for free under Creative Commons license, and kind of what I was asking for in return was that they would also submit some of their footage to the film in ways that I could use it, and hopefully they would take it another step further and actually remix the film, and then I would include those scenes in the final film. So I started production on that in November of last year, and I just wrapped it, although I'm going to do a shoot tomorrow. But now we're in post, and so the next 4 months we're trying to include a lot of that user-generated work back into the film.
So Andrew, let me ask you, in terms of Rocketboom and what I assume started as you guys doing short form content, what did you see in the reason that you disseminate across so many different outlets to get it out, to aggregate that audience? How does that break down? Like, if you were going to break it down, and we'll cut right to the chase, like how are you staffed to do that? How do you fund that? And how does the viewership and the audience that you have dictate what you guys do on a daily basis?
Okay. So we are just a small crew. Basically, for the first year that we started out, it was just 2 people. Because it's only just 3 minutes, our format each day is to research on the web just to find news and interesting stories. And then that's part of the process for us, is just being a filter of interesting information. Then we spend some time writing a script. We present everything in sort of a news format, a little bit like The Daily Show in terms of using the news format to have fun and play with. So then we write a script, then we film it in the studio and go through and get all of that, just those bits of the script that are at the news desk, because quite often we cut to assets and voiceovers of other information. So then we gather up all of those assets from around the web, and then we edit it all together. Then we render it up into many different file formats, and then we publish it online. And so all of that happens like on a daily cycle, just kind of like a news cycle. And so 2 people can do that, but they can also drive themselves mad and not sleep for forever. And so over time, as we've started to grow a business out of it, we now have pretty much a 3-person production team. And then we also recently got a programmer and an ad sponsorship salesperson. So that's basically our team. We have every month we have millions of downloads through all of the different combined platforms. So, it parallels a lot of smaller TV shows. And what else?
Oh, I was just wondering, in terms of the economics of that, I know at one point you guys had done something where you were auctioning off ad space, where you were selling ad space on eBay, and then what did that end up going for when you did that?
When we first did it, it was kind of a hyperbole a little bit, just because we were kind of, one of the things that Rocketboom represents in a way, just in retrospect a little bit, is that we kind of have been one of the cheerleaders of the sort of the online serial content, short form shows that have come kind of like out of the basement or sort of with the independent spirit. And so when we did those when we first put up our inventory online on eBay, it was kind of a big moment just because it was, the industry still was so much further behind that nobody had validated the business side of any of this yet. So it was kind of, people had it all on the radar. And we ended up getting a $40,000 for 1 week of advertising, another $40,000 for another week, and then, by the way, it's kind of interesting, but we everything about Rocketboom is also informed a lot by blogging, so we're real transparent with a lot of the information and everything. Last year we brought in $210,000 from advertising, $250,000 total, just from conferences and other kinds of miscellaneous work for hire stuff. But we also are just getting going, actually. We don't have a stable ad scenario yet. We've got a very great model that we've built, and we've been slowly growing it, but the rest of the advertising industry is slowly coming too, so we're just kind of going with the flow on a lot of it, but it's all pretty lucrative. Just because, especially, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, is that we're able to do the production for so cheap, because ultimately it's just the human salary of just a few people, and it's not, we use a regular camera from Best Buy, and we have a laptop and a map and a couple lights, so it's so cheap to make, virtually nothing, and so cheap to distribute. We don't have any promotion costs, so it's all almost entirely profit beyond just our own time.
Arin and Susan, if I could, I just want to, you guys have done so many different things in terms of looking at the traditional model when you were hunting for distribution, and then that kind of eroded away and you realized that maybe it wasn't what you hoped it would be, to the point of where you kind of went out and you kind of seized the opportunity and kind of started just doing stuff, which obviously started with the podcast, which has had so many views. You guys have had an active audience where you've built that audience over time. How does that affect not only the way that you're making the content that you're giving back to them, but in the way that you decided to harness some of the theatrical work that you've done? And if you could talk about that, I think that theatrical on-demand model in particular, and just anything in terms of how that audience response has affected the way that you've been building the model that you have.
Yeah, sure. Well, first we got a question, Lance. Did you see that?
Was it to where to download your...
Do any of you still have a day job?
Oh, well, that's actually a very good question. No, I don't have a day job. I do this for a living. Not speak on panels, but make films.
Yeah, this is my day job.
Same.
Same here. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Cool.
Do you guys have people planted in the audience, by the way?
No. Well, we have people planted all over the world, actually.
Right.
Okay, so I guess we could address that by talking about sort of the video podcast. I don't know. We've been talking about this idea of life log filmmaking, and it's sort of what our film is because it's autobiographical, but also it's what our video podcast is. Episode 1 has footage that spans over like five years, and I don't know, in terms of addressing your question, I guess I could say that it's sort of like we're building a relationship with our audience the same way we built a relationship with each other, which is just reaching out and making contact. Like in our film, we're text messaging back and forth, writing notes, sending each other videos. We tried to create that same dynamic with the audience, making videos for them.
Making the short form videos, since we would release episodes one at a time for the video podcast, like it definitely informed our creative process, because we would see how people were responding to an episode and see if they were getting all the ideas that we tried to put in it, and realizing like what was working and what wasn't affected how we would edit the next video. Also affected how we would revise the film, which hadn't been released yet. But this interaction with the audience also directly affected our distribution model.
Yeah. Well, and we can talk about that a little bit, the self-distribution effort. The first thing we wanted to do was like build a distribution team so we weren't completely on our own, and we enlisted the help of Brian Churls, who's in the back there filming this little panel. We'll hopefully put a clip on our website. And we partnered with sponsors, working with Without a Box, Spout, Cashfly, Our Stage, and a bunch of other supporters. And we moved into a DIY theatrical, and for us, what we thought that looked like was essentially like collecting zip codes and email addresses, because we were getting all these like messages from people where they were like saying, oh, we really want to see your film in our town, but we had no way of keeping track of that. So we asked people, okay, give us your email and your zip code and we'll sort through that information later. So here's a clip showing how we sorted through that information. This does have audio if you guys want to show some of it. So this just kind of shows how like we plotted all the people out, all the zip codes out in Google Earth, and had a opt-in form so people could put in their country, could work anywhere in the world. And then we'd keep track of theaters as well. We have a huge database of theaters that we share actually if any other filmmakers want to use it. It's all on our website.
And we constantly would put out videos that were also about the distribution and kept our process completely transparent to the audience. So again, it was like their interaction with us was in them making the distribution of our film possible as part of like what was creating a story.
Yeah. So then we noticed as we were releasing more videos, the request numbers would climb. This is most of 2006. We started in January and didn't say much about it. It was just a little thing on the website. But then we started plugging it at the end of some of our videos, and you see a little peak over by March and then April. Basically, those peaks are every time we posted a video, because that brought more people to the site and got people engaged. And the videos were all these episodes, basically just little short documentary things about weird experiences and problems making the film, and the difficulty of being in a relationship and making a film about that relationship, and just any kind of hardships that we thought were interesting to share. So then,
can I ask you a quick question? In terms of the numbers that we saw there, what was the conversion rate in regards to the amount of people that made requests in relation to who actually came out and saw the film for you?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. We noticed a conversion rate with our first leg of our DIY theatrical. The first thing we learned is that it's a 1-to-1 conversion rate, approximately. We were in the Undiscovered Gems showcase, and that was in a bunch of cities that we didn't necessarily pick out. But one of them was New York City, and that did really well. Then we did our Thursdays in September, and that was every Thursday the film would play in 6 cities. And there we learned that basically word of mouth does work for our film, because every single Thursday did better than the previous Thursday.
We also opened the film in a traditional way at Cinema Village, and just it played a few times a week. Which did not do well. I mean, about the same number of people that came throughout the course of the week is the same number of people came that would come on one Thursday in September. But yeah, that's just not a model that we think works for a film like ours that's so small and so niche. And then 30 cities on Valentine's Day, again, just...
It went okay, but there we learned that actually we were able to get better splits when we were negotiating with the theaters ourselves than with the ones where we were working with a distribution partner. And another way to look at this information is basically per ticket sold, how many dollars did we make? So for our Thursdays in September screenings, those were the best. We made $3.50 for every ticket that sold. And then the Cinema Village run was okay, made about $3. But then for the Valentine's Day screening and the Undiscovered Gems screenings, it's only around $1, and that's because we were working with a distribution partner. So basically, we basically made more money and grossed more when we were doing our theatrical based on our model, where it was the screenings were happening in cities that had a lot of requests. The other screenings that were sort of more thrown together by these showcases and everything, they weren't so much based on any kind of actual...
Well, they're not based on demand, so...
Yeah. So this is something we hope to see like eventually become common in the theatrical world. And then also, I don't know, do you want me to talk about how we promoted the screenings? Or save that?
Yeah, let's come back to
Okay.
that in a second. Brett, I want to ask, in terms of your doc basement tapes, there's a very strong kind of crowdsourced element to it. And the idea of, not only is it tackling issues of copyright and music, but it's kind of reaching out and letting people remix elements of the film and then give them back. How do you balance that? Like, how is that working in terms of the production of the film, and what are the logistics? And maybe you can explain a little bit what brought that about. Why reach out to the audience, have them kind of remix this element?
Yeah, I think, similarly, I wanted to be able to build a relationship with the audience for a lot of reasons. The first was sort of political, because I did feel that our media is changing from something that's very top-down and produced by a very few to a lot of people are producing. And I knew that there was that potential there for them to be involved. And so I kind of felt that, if they were involved in making it, they would be that much more invested in wanting to see it and be involved in the distribution of it. And so how that works, it's been a bit scattershot. The original intention was that there would be scenes in the movie that I would make specific calls for. And it was quite a learning experience in kind of what I've now learned is the 1% rule, which is basically 1% of your audience is going to is going to contribute on the level that you're really wanting them to. Like Wikipedia, for instance, there's not as many people as you think that actually create and kind of watch over the articles that are being created. So I was kind of trying to create a spectrum of ways that the audience could get involved in. I did have people that would actually take whole scenes that I had put up, and with narration that I had written, and with actual goals that I wanted for this section of the film, and they would actually go and do a 5 to 10 minute video that was with great production values, and that was fantastic, and that one's great. I can just plunk that into the film at this one specific time. But some of the other requests I had, the audience was kind of showing me that they were probably too vague of a request, or there was too much to ask. Tell me the history of the internet. That's probably, I'm not going to be able to get a lot of people doing that because it's a specialized area of research and they don't have the material to do that. But what I did find was that when I made the request very specific and not too time consuming, in other words, if I was able to model it around behavior that those viewers already had, and I'm not going to say consumers because that was sort of like part of the whole thing with the film, was that I wanted to either have people become creators instead of consumers. That was really important. So this all kind of started to gel when I found basically the main character of the film, which was an artist called Girl Talk. And Girl Talk is he's a great documentary character just in and of himself, in that he's a biomedical engineer during the day, and then at night he becomes this rock star that travels around the United States and the world and basically puts on these mashup shows. Do you guys know Girl Talk? Anybody? Okay, it's right on. Should you text it to me or?
Put that camera down and text it, Isis.
But the thing when you go to a Girl Talk show, basically he makes mashups. So they're songs that are created out of tiny bits and pieces of other people's songs, and he creates entirely new works of art. Like you'd listen to the song and he would say, that is new, that's creation. So it worked for the argument that I was making in the film. But what I was also finding was that his audience was basically doing for him what I wanted them to do for me. And if I went to his MySpace page, they'd all go, awesome, great show, here's a picture of that show, here's a video from my phone from that show. Here's a picture of me up on stage drunk at your show, because the thing about Girl Talk is that if you go to a show, you're up on stage too. That line between the consumer and the producer is smashed at his show. So it was great. And do you have the quick time that you can?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
This is a little bit of footage that I edited together, and this was when the user-generated content started to come through. So this mixes my footage, their footage, and then sort of other stuff that we found on the web.
Bring the volume up a little there.
Today, we're going to create a mashup. A mashup is when you take two or more songs and combine them into one very special song of your
I'll
own.
put in the minimal version.
And people used to kind of describe the shows as, you know, the guy who's having a blast in his bedroom pretending he's rocking out to this audience going nuts for him. But now I'm doing it and it's a reality, you know?
I know there's a lot of cameras in the audience. The shit is not about me. It's about all of us because we're the same motherfucking person. It's the whole thing.
When you're online,
And the sort of the next
it's
scene
easy
is
to find out
kind of,
who you
to
are.
answer your question,
okay? We
how do I
have
mix it with
date,
my own footage?
The name, the address,
Let's
and
crank it
all
there.
the 2,000 songs that you had up on your computer illegally, okay? And you can get 5 years in jail and $250,000 fines for every single song you steal.
How many of you guys here actually do download music off the internet right now? Tell the truth. You guys, like, how many of you guys actually think that when you're downloading your music that you're stealing it? You can cut. So there's definitely, that's a trailer, by the way. I don't have any of the actual scenes played out in their entirety on there. So my idea was that I would basically be able to kind of meld traditional documentary of scenes that I've shot, but mix those with material that the crowd has produced.
Brent, can we show the end of the trailer too? Because that part.
Sure, yeah, show the end of that. Back it up, I think, though.
No hell below us.
You gotta back it up.
There's no reason for us to turn a generation of our children into criminals. They're like, you know, what I'm doing is illegal. Why is what I'm doing illegal? What's wrong in what I'm doing? I'm creating, I'm re-expressing, I'm criticizing, I'm spreading ideas. What's wrong with it? But the reality is, under our law, that's illegal.
Imagine yourself heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. The color girls say peace. Take a walk on the wild side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Imagine yourself countries.
So that's like a little mashup, obviously, of that was, okay, so this guy he took all of George Bush's political speeches ever and found all the little words and put those together into a song, and then I added some visuals, and then someone else would work on it. And that was sort of the kind of layers that I wanted to be able to create in that interaction. And so the film's not done, but I'm real, like, from a lot of what you guys were doing too, I think I took a lot of cues from that too. And as a video blogger, building that relationship is really important, but, you know, how do I, because it's intended for a theater, so how do I take it into a theater, and it's probably a niche audience, and how do I kind of address those people? And I figured that if they made it, they're probably going to want to come and see it. So that was a big part of the motivation for that as well. And then I think after the film is done, what I really hope is that, you know, that'll be in a year, you know, so we'll see what's going on then. But what I'm hoping for is that we kind of be able to create a documentary cinema that isn't just so focused on the end product. And I think it's really important for social documentary filmmaking as well, because, you know, we've all shot hundreds of hours that we just ends up on the cutting room floor for what? Because of it, you know, basically to sacrifice of the narrative. But there's a lot of places that we can't go as filmmakers that we might want to, and I think the web allows us to do that. If we can present things in more of a non-linear way. So for instance, if you were watching that, why can't you just stop it and then kind of pull out everything that went into making that clip and all the references that provides? And that kind of speaks to the open source nature as well, that people should be able to see what went into it. Which also really as a documentary filmmaker, it can be hard. Like, I didn't get my interview with the MPAA because they Googled me. And I actually had that when I was coming, I'm from Montreal, and I came down here, and the border guards were Googling me, and he was like, what's open source cinema? And so similarly, I think it's harder to get like the gotcha interview when you're being this transparent, but I think there's a balance there. That's probably good, you know, it's keeps you honest.
Well, let me ask you guys, in terms of the, you know, Andrew, you have a catalog of work that you're putting together, and Arin and Susan, you've had, you know, you have a feature film, and Brett, you have a film that'll be coming to market. How are you guys thinking about the way that you derive the rights? I mean, you divide them up in the opportunities that you have. In terms of, I know personally with my own work, I've found myself kind of balanced between a traditional model, you know, in certain regards towards theatrical, DVD, then kind of jumping over and doing some stuff that's a little less traditional, you know, in terms of event-driven things, and then even carving up the way I do rights, you know, in terms of VOD or digital downloads. Andrew, maybe we could start with you in terms of that catalog, because obviously Rocketboom is a catalog, right? I mean, you have, what happens with that? Have you thought about ways that you package that, you bundle it? What are some of the ways that you're you know, looking to find other revenue streams through the work you're doing?
Well, I think all of us probably up here use Creative Commons, right? We all use that. The beauty of that being that, of course, if you, it's an actual form of copyrights. It's just already kind of like the one that you get at the store that's already pre-packaged, but it's kind of validated online. And it essentially, for us, we use, anybody is allowed to use our material for any purpose whatsoever, as long as it's not commercial use, and they're not allowed to redistribute it for any reason. And so so that means like they can basically, or the reason why that's important for us is because it allows the content to spread really nicely, because people don't even have to call and ask us if they want to use it or incorporate it into something that they create, if they want to just show it at a school or something. But then the moment that somebody wants to actually make money off of it or something, then they have to come and talk to us, and then we work out a particular deal with them. And so when distributing our stuff on other sites like YouTube or any other of the Flash type sites, or really anywhere, the one thing that's the most important to me whenever I'm engaging with a certain relationship is just to know that like with YouTube, I don't care what they do with my content if I upload it onto their site. If they're going to use it to promote something or another, or to do something, that would all be beneficial for me. But the moment that I decide I want to remove my content, then all of their rights cease. And so that to me is always the important thing. It's like, I'm using this time period right now just to get the content out there and to build up an audience.
Now, let me ask you, is that outside of what their normal terms are when you upload? Have you struck a different deal with them in terms of?
No, I mean, that's just a big misunderstanding that most people have when they're afraid, you know, of, you know, YouTube can do stuff with my content, and sure they can, and when you tell them to remove it, it might even take them a couple weeks or something, but the only reason why I'd ask somebody to remove it is because I'm about to engage in yet another contract, you know, that would be really big or something, and I'll have a 2-week leeway to do that. So it's not a big issue, really.
And when Rocketboom's going through those outlets, is there still advertising that you're putting on there that's running across, so that aggregate audience is counts as views for you? How does that work moving forward? Will you just remove yourself from an outlet like YouTube if they actually start to support themselves with actual ads or overlays? Will you actually pull from that outlet and find other outlets?
Well, we've got a really good setup right now by because we decided to A, distribute it everywhere and to like stack up views, and then B, since we decided to create the ad department sort of in-house instead of just go do a partnership with one entity to do ads, what we've wound up with consequently is a great scenario where just like, for instance, a few weeks ago we had an ad, a sponsorship from Twitter. And so at the end of the episode, it just came up and said, thanks to our sponsor, Twitter. And then it went away. And so we burn that into the episode, so it went out on all of our distribution platforms, from phone to HD to TiVo, even on YouTube. But so now, we also, for instance, have a rev share deal with YouTube, but they are obviously they seem to be having some problems with their ad stuff because they announced all the rollout, but has anybody seen any ads on YouTube?
No, thank God.
But nobody's said anything either. It's like all
We've seen
quiet or
one.
something.
There was a video where somebody captured it, and then that got spread around.
Yeah, basically they ended
Pops
up
up.
they ended up pulling it because they were having problems with people who were actually hacking into the browser and launching the player in a different, like taking the stream and playing it in a different player and stripping the ads.
Oh, yeah,
So
okay.
then they went back to the drawing board to try to figure out a way to do it.
Awesome.
That's a little embarrassing for that kind of a group, but so anyway, so then what we're able to do is we would say, okay, so you finally got the ad thing running, and then we would sit there and say, would we make more money from YouTube, or would we make more money from the sponsorship that we would sell? And we would be able to say, well, let's do the YouTube thing, and then let's have our sponsorship. Well, when we sell it, we won't sell this one with YouTube, or somebody might come along and say, we want just your TiVo distribution, and we could say, all right, for the month of February, you can have all of the TiVo. Meanwhile, we'll do all of these other things with. So we're real like nimble and flexible and.
And can you manage that in the encoding process? Can you dynamically swap stuff in and all that?
Yeah, that's the kind of cool thing too, is that with regards to the Flash and the QuickTime, we can do it all dynamically, even with the QuickTime, which hasn't really been. There hasn't been a lot of progress on that otherwise. And then we burn in all of the stuff for all the other distributions, like the 3GPs or the MP4s and the MPEGs and et cetera.
I have a question. Have you thought about making custom RSS feeds for your individual users that could have some user information in the feed delivered to them?
Yeah, we have thought about that a little bit, like by putting
Well,
really
hold on one
unique
second.
hash marks.
Does everybody know what RSS is? Does anybody need to know what that is? You should, if you want to just explain what RSS is first.
Sure. Well, I'm talking a lot. Do you want to jump in, or you?
Well, you're the RSS expert.
Well, RSS basically is in a way, it's like podcasting. You know, the idea where when somebody has their iPod video player and then they come home from work and they're tired and they stick it on the dock, and then when they wake up the next morning and they pull it off and now it's all new content, and then they get to watch their new video show, like there would be Rocketboom on there and some of their other podcasts, and then again when they come home at night and put it back. So all of that back-end technology is RSS. It's like what bloggers use a lot to keep track of all of the data and stuff. And so it's, in a nutshell, the reason why it's important is because if a video file is really big, like we have big HD file versions of our thing, and so when you click on it, it doesn't necessarily just play right away. It's kind of frustrating. But if you have your computer download it automatically overnight onto the computer, then when you wake up or come to work in the morning and you click on it, it's already, since it's local on your computer, it plays right away in full quality, and you can sit there and scroll it and everything like that. And then that's what pumps like to the Apple TV and some of the other stuff. So it's almost so pervasive that you don't hear about that kind of thing anymore. It's kind of like, don't you know what a converter 2750 is under your hood or something like that? So.
Let me ask you, Arin, in terms of the, looking at the podcast, because some people might say, okay, well, Rocketboom is a serialized content, but I have a feature film and I'm making a movie. I'm not maybe, making serialized content. What would something like that have done? Like if you look at the podcast that you guys had been doing and you were experimenting with that at that time, were you kind of taking additional footage or you're making it? Like looking at that model, is that something like, I guess I should ask, as you go forward, will you take anything that you learned from, obviously you will, but anything that you learned from making that podcast and apply it to the way that you do supplementary stuff around the next project? Will it have the same kind of outreach, in those terms?
Well, I think the next project will be more like almost open source, using more like user-generated feedback and asking for specific things, and then creating videos out of some of that stuff, and even having like users like edit and take footage and do things with that, that will, things that will be leading to a larger feature project, but still there's like these episodic videos that are getting made that's also correspondence with the audience.
Yeah, because see, what we're looking at is the life blogging kind of idea. It sort of ties in with video blogging and people just kind of writing blogs about their own personal lives. And everybody, running around with cameras. Where's your camera, Susan?
Right.
Just kind of shooting like all these moments of their lives and like taking pictures. And you've got Flickr and all these different Facebook and MySpace to have a blog or upload photos. And everything is just like, has like RSS feeds coming out of it. And so I think there's probably a way to combine all that stuff and turn it into a movie. And I think that's kind of what's going on with the open source cinema concept. But we're also interested in pursuing that
We're also
moving
becoming,
forward.
I think with Four-Eyed Monsters, the film, and then the video podcast, it was very one directional, we would say something and sure, we'd get comments back or whatever. But we're much more interested in a more what you're doing actually. Just it's not a one-directional medium. It's it's a collaborative medium.
And so, what brings that about? Where does that interest come from? I mean, some people would probably say, "Well, that's a lot of additional work that you're doing. Or are you making it more complicated? Why should I bother with that? Because I make feature films. That's what I do. Why do I care what the audience has to give back to me? Are you actually doing more work, or are you hoping that by kind of crowdsourcing that element, they're going to help you to make something that they're invested in? What's that decision?
I think specifically for us, it's the content that we're interested in. We're interested in content that has to do with people's real lives, and I personally am still interested in exploring relationships, interpersonal relationships and communication. And what better way to explore that than through actually communicating, using the medium that you're trying to tell a story with to also communicate with people back and forth. I mean, I still think that at the end of the day, you're making something that's your vision. You know what I mean? That you end up putting together, and you're still filtering things out. But with such a greater source of information and dialogue, that's why I think it works for us, and it actually makes the work a little bit less for us as opposed to more. Because I think it
can be more organic.
It's more organic because it's really hard for us to sit around in our loft and figure out how to communicate with people. You know what I mean?
Project out a script.
Yeah, project this idea onto people that
I couldn't even imagine doing it any other way now.
Right,
because
exactly.
I couldn't imagine finishing the film and then being what do you guys think? Because what would you do? And somebody's like, well, why didn't you do this? I can't now. But if you have that relationship with your audience, and you can. I mean, I think the reasons for doing it might, for documentary and narrative, are similar and different at the same time. But I couldn't agree more about why you would want somebody to self-represent. And I think that really, it fits along a basically clear thread of the development of cinema, especially in documentary. I mean, the cameras used to be really big, and then the only reportage we would have was basically a voice of God saying, this is what's happening in Germany right now. And then, weeks later you would get it. And then as the cameras got smaller, people would actually be able to go to those events, and you saw, Cinema Verite and things like that, where it became possible to actually record events unfolding as they actually did. And I think we're now at and then it became camcorders, okay, so now the person can film themselves, and we've seen a lot of films that very successfully integrated that. But I think what we're talking about now is something different, because it allows you to integrate that holistically into your work, and it allows you to have that dialogue. I think it's going to change the way that it should change the way we think about the film, because it shouldn't end after 90 minutes. That's my big
But then again, nothing I don't think is mandatory. I mean, if somebody does simply want the old-fashioned way, create and simply output with no feedback loop, that's okay. Sure. But I think what's exciting in a new medium is the more conversational way of using media, where you're not making a big piece of art that you're going to throw out into the world, but instead you're saying something, they're saying something back. You're saying something, they're saying something back. It's more natural and more the way that we engage, but with the power of visual and audio and editing and all of that.
It's kind of funny. It's like dance-offs or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's kind of like, I feel like filmmaking is going more towards those things. Like, you know, like those breakdancing face-offs, whatever. But it's like...
Vlog battles. Have you ever done one of those? Where, yeah, they have those online.
Oh, really?
You know, yeah, for sure. I did one where, you know, and somebody says, like, make a vlog in 2 minutes about, you know, unrequited love. And then everybody runs back to their computer and they make it and they send it up. And that was one thing that really, really attracted me to video blogging, was that I didn't have to do it for like, you know, a year and it'd be this, pour my soul into it, and it was this huge thing. It could be like, you know, you kind of exercise your filmmaking muscles and just put it out, and then, but then right away with the medium, you'd have comments on it right away, and it was like, you know, you'd have some feedback.
Let me ask, in terms of that conversation back and forth with the audience, you know, and you're reaching out to them and you're getting feedback from them. There are interesting trends that have been happening where obviously we're talking about the concept of crowdsourcing. We're talking about, you know, there's a really strong movement online with fan fiction. There's a strong movement with fan art. So in that conversation that you have back and forth with the audience, how do you deal with, you know, when the audience is coming back at you? Because obviously there's going to be times where you don't agree with what the audience is saying. Mm-hmm. And then there's always a process in terms of making work where you kind of open yourself up, and it's time when you have a rough cut or you get people to kind of say something back to you. Is there any danger in terms of when you're working that conversation back and forth that it's almost too much dialogue, that it starts to make you think or overthink something or remove something that you wouldn't normally remove? You know, because some people would argue, well, wait, you know, that's your audience, but, you know, they're used to a passive viewing experience. How are they going to best know what's right, you know, for the work?
I don't know. It's also personal, too. You know, they start giving us advice about our lives and asking questions like, well, are you guys going to get married?
No, but I remember, do you remember with episode 8 where people were, like, really angry at me specifically? Yeah. Like, for a little while, we were considering not releasing certain things that we were planning on releasing before, because I didn't know if I really felt like having a bunch of people angry at me.
Well, because we're thinking, if you got
why
upset
were
over
they angry
that,
with you? Why were they angry?
They were, well, at the end of episode 8.
I stopped watching.
Yeah, like Arin and I, obviously, we were in a relationship, and when at the end of episode 8, I kissed another person that was not Arin. So we put this into the story because we thought it was relevant. But yeah, a lot of people were really upset with me. They thought I was like, you know, backstabbing Arin. Like, people were telling him to leave me, and it was kind of dramatic. But then it was funny because there was like these other people that were like sticking up for me. It was weird. But it made us like kind of reconsider some, because there's more scandalous things we have to put out onto the world. But we just didn't know if it was.
They really haven't seen anything. That's what blew our mind.
Yeah, so we weren't sure if we should do it or not. But, you know, eventually we came to the conclusion that better us than somebody else. I mean, and there's ways to spin things, obviously. And, like, if people are having, like, this really negative reaction to something, it's actually interesting feedback, because it's like, wow, well, why don't we feel like that was a really negative thing to have happened? Okay, well, obviously we haven't explained it, like, the right way. Right. So then it's like, it actually makes you a better communicator, because you're like, no, I really want them to see my point of view. How can we make them see this point of view? And that's like being, I mean, I think that's ultimately what filmmaking is, you know, it's like that's, you're not necessarily good at conversation and trying to get people to, like, win them over to your point, but with, like, this form of media, you somehow are. It's like you somehow get people swept up into your message. Ideally.
Well, we would have things where, like, we'd post, you know, episodes 1 through 8 are very, like, episodic. They all link together. So we'd post, you know, 2, and then by the time we were editing 3, we're based on, like, the 50 or so comments that people had written on our MySpace blog, we're thinking, like, they really got this, they really got this, they really understand this. But, you know, like, this really abstract idea that is going to be really critical, they're not really, like, on board yet. So for the next episode, we really got to, like, step that up, because we're playing with all these levels of subtlety where we don't want to hit people over the head, we want it to be artistic, and we want it to be a discovery. So it's that kind of, just like a conversation, a real time. Like, if someone's nodding and, like, getting it, you know. But if someone's just like, you know, they're just lost, like, that's kind of the equivalent of just making a 90-minute thing and throwing it up there and having no clue what's going to happen. By making these smaller things and throwing them out and getting all this feedback, you kind of know how your punches are landing and how to adjust as you move forward, like you're driving an airplane.
Well,
kind of
also,
thing.
like, as other people are raising points, like, they're like, oh, this upset me or this whatever. I mean, it definitely makes you think to yourself, do they have a point? And then try to get behind their point of view, which just makes you a better communicator, I think, anyways, which is sort of
Right.
the purpose.
A big filmmaking exercise in the end.
Yeah.
And so how did that boil down for you, because if we could talk about it, because it seems like in terms of what Andrew's doing, that, it's sponsored and ad subsidized. Arin and Susan, if you could speak for a second about the spout scenario that you had, where you were actually, maybe you could explain how that came about and how that was structured. So, because it seems like there was a window of opportunity that was there. Is that something that could be
Yeah.
repeated by somebody else, or?
It has been repeated. Another film
Like
did that.
verbatim.
I could show just a little intro where we introduced our film on YouTube, if we have audio here.
Well, if you could just set the context, because I don't
Yeah.
know if everybody's familiar with the spout part.
Sure. Well, we uploaded our film to YouTube.
Which is free. It's like free to watch, obviously.
So you can watch the entire film, not the episodes we've been talking about. The film that is, the episodes are about making the film, and this is the actual movie.
I'm Susan.
And we have uploaded our entire feature film, Four-Eyed Monsters, to YouTube.
Yes, it's 70 minutes long. I do hope you enjoy it after this introduction. Just so you know, the film cost us to be in a lot of credit card debt, and we haven't even really begun to pay off. That being said, we have some good news, which is this amazing website, spout.com, has offered to help us get out of debt by giving us $1 for every person that we can get to join their site.
So go over to spout.com/Four-Eyed Monsters and just join real quick. That gives us $1. It doesn't cost you anything because it's a free website.
Right, up to $100,000, which would be like an enormous chunk of our credit card debt.
Yeah, and tell us what you think of the film as well. You can either post a review on Spout, since it's all about reviewing films, or you can send us a video response on YouTube. Okay, so then we, after that, we tell people to pause the video and go join up on Spout, which, by the way, everybody here should do. You go to spout.com/4eyed.
But basically, Spout is it's a social networking website, but it's just around filmmaking. It's around our videos, like movies that you're going to watch, movies that you have seen that you want to recommend, and it's just about watching movies, basically.
Now
it was it made sense because we're a movie.
Yeah. Now, since we've been doing that, you can see here on our website, this updates on the fly every 15 seconds. It looks at their site to see how many people we've been able to get to join. And so that pretty much worked amazingly. We in the first couple months we got 800,000 views, and then we actually uploaded the film to MySpace as well. And then if you look at the line here about these are people joining Spout and these are views. So they go up together. When we get a boost in people viewing the film, we get a boost in people joining Spout. So basically, if you do the math, it breaks down to somewhere a little below 5% of the views translate into people joining Spout. So essentially, a view to our film equals a little below 5 cents. So that's really cool, because with all the episodes, we were always posting these videos, and it wasn't like we were getting any money or anything like that. We were just going deeper into debt and just kind of pursuing the project, knowing that eventually things would work out. So this was the first situation where, especially at the beginning of June, the first day we made like $7,000 in just like a 24-hour period, and we just saw that kind of those signups just like flying in. And it also is very interactive because, as you saw in the video, you see an arm put the $1 in. All these people are saying to us, "I gave you $1." And it's kind of funny because actually they didn't give us $1. It's a free website to join, but somehow they've been tricked into feeling as though they've given us $1 towards our cause. And so it works out great for Spout because all these, people into independent film are joining their site and now interacting on the site. We got tons of reviews on Spout of our film, people sending us messages through Spout. So not only did people join Spout, but they actually utilized the site after they've been joining. And then the other interesting thing about that is all the while we'd been selling shirts and downloads and DVDs. And during that time, we also saw a big boost in sales that we would not have seen if we didn't have those free views to the film. So our store grossed, close to $30,000 since we've been running it. So it worked out, worked out really great. And a lot of the revenue in our store has been from things other than DVDs. So that's downloads, shirts, and posters, which is all possible because we're using B-Side to have our store. Because if you just sell a DVD through some of the DVD solutions out there, you can't have one store that has all your stuff in one place.
Let me ask you guys just real quick, in terms of doing that, because that goes against traditional logic. Everybody always says, well, if you take your content and you put it up online like that, you're going to kind of threaten some of the broadcast rights or some of the television rights or potentially foreign sales in a traditional sense. How has that affected you, in terms of where you are? Now, I think in regards to the amount of money that you've made already on Spout, that goes much larger than most people will see off of, a regular pay cable deal or even a basic cable deal after you factor in certain delivery elements and things along those lines. So just putting that out there. But has it affected you traditionally? Like, are you still able to do anything?
Well, we were told by legal advice and various people in the industry that uploading the film, the entire film to YouTube, was going to really compromise our deal making propositions. But actually, in reality, every deal that we're still negotiating is either still on the table or has doubled in some cases. Because what happened is that people started seeing people that we're trying to make deals with started to see well, okay, this is not only a decent film, but also it's becoming a bit of a phenomenon, that will sort of be remembered by certain people that it appeals to. So it's more profitable in DVD and a bunch of other platforms because of its, discoverability, I guess, because now people know about it. And also, if you look at the views again, a lot of the ways that people determine how a film will do on DVD is they look at its theatrical. So if you look at how many people have seen the film and try and estimate how well we might do with a traditional DVD release where it's actually available beyond just on our website, we don't know. It's going to be an interesting experiment. But I think that we're going to be able to see a correlation between free views to the film and downloads, and that might and purchases of DVD, and that might have something to do with the ratio between when people go see a film in a theater and a film performs well theatrically, and then that film performing well on DVD. So all signs seem to point towards it hasn't hurt us at all to upload the film to YouTube.
Would you post it in full resolution though? I mean, probably not.
Well, it's available in full resolution through BitTorrent and file sharing.
You put it up there?
We didn't put it up, but we definitely...
But our downloads that we sell are DRM free.
Yeah.
So
Right,
it's
yeah.
essentially, full, complete quality.
So people are placing it other places?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know about the DRM ones that we sell, because we did find when we did some research that our our DVD had been ripped and then put into file sharing, which is not a complaint because the film's free on YouTube, so what do we care? But actually someone was asking, did anyone take FEM from YouTube and repost it elsewhere? That hasn't been an issue in terms of people uploading it to other video sites. But in terms of the kind of more underground space, it's harder to track that, and we don't necessarily go and search every day to see what's out there.
Well, and for us, we wouldn't be upset because it has the Spout sponsorship plea at the beginning. As long as that travels with the film, we don't care where it goes.
Yeah, well, we're actually moving into other websites.
Or we're happy for it to go as far as it can go.
Yeah, because we added it to MySpace, and now we're looking at some other potential places where we can put the film for free because, one of the things that happened early on is people said, oh, well, we can give you a deal for $15,000 to take the majority of your rights. So to date, we've grossed more than $135,000. And all the things that we've been doing couldn't have been done if we'd given these rights to someone else. We would not have the ability to do this. So obviously, it's paid off to not take that deal.
Andrew, let me ask you, in terms of you had such a large audience with what you were doing with Rocketboom. Was there any times where people came in and wanted to try to, bring you into the fold and basically do something with you on a larger level with that, and similar to what Arin is talking about here in terms of having the freedom and the flexibility to control the rights in your own, have an artistic integrity or whatever you want to call it around it. Did you experience that at any point?
Yeah, well, on a small level, just we've probably engaged in like maybe 30 different contracts, that some small, some big, some didn't lead to anything really, but they were all with a distribution partner, and they would be either like a rev share thing or a licensing contract or other things. And there were some cases where it just required legal on our end always to protect our own rights, to make sure that there wasn't any worminess going on in the contracts, because we did run into a little bit of that. But there was, offers just for flat out acquisition, but then that would have given them complete control over everything. It's more just like a sell out or something. So, but yeah, I mean, the way I look at it still is that I think that, even though we're starting to fare okay now, and that our model is ad related and everything, that there is some hope that in the future there'll be some nostalgic quality to our content, and that it might be worthwhile to license it, like my kids will think it's fun or something, and their generation might, laugh at it and want to talk about it or something in a weird way. And that's when it could get really important to make sure that there aren't these lingering companies around that have it. But
It's
yeah,
interesting because it's all one funnel, and some of the things you post are like their own short films, but they go through the Rocketboom channel, and all the legal agreements and little end user license agreements that are intact with that. It's kind of interesting.
Apply to everything. Yeah, it's like a factory kind of. This is the most interesting thing too, is on that note, as far as I know, there's never been a single person or entity online that's ever been sued and had to pay any money for copyright infringement in the video space. So like everybody that's ever put something up on YouTube, anybody that's ever made something, sure, there's been plenty of cease and desists, and people saying, take this down, or, we're still in disagreement. And most of the time, of course, people just stop right away. But nobody's ever been awarded any money yet. And Google is about to, coincidentally, we're lucky because Google with YouTube is going to be the greatest champion for fair use that has ever been.
Good.
And in fact, they're going to court now. That they've subpoenaed the Daily Show anchors, because they want the jury to hear whether or not their clips being on YouTube has hurt them.
So funny, it's win-win. Then they get put it on YouTube, and everyone's awesome. They're just everyone's going to watch it.
It's given them, a real social wealth that is undeniable. Like, it's increased their value. That's the main perspective. It's like we can nickel and dime all of these little rights issues about my nickel and your nickel, but ultimately we're increasing our brand awareness and making a name for ourselves to where everything in the future then becomes more valuable. I know that's what you guys are all thinking too. That's kind of like the way of the web.
So, Brett, in terms of when you go to roll it out, because I know you're actually still shooting it, what is the release strategy for it? Like, how will you continue to engage the audience? Is there any innovative way that you're going to be tackling theatrical, event-driven things that kind of follow along with what you've set in terms of the tone of having that conversation with the audience?
Yeah, I think if we can, what I really want to do is for the theatrical release, because I think it'll be a fairly limited release. But I think a couple of things, because we, one of the two characters in the film tend to make a fair amount of public engagements. So Girl Talk is the musician, and then the other is Lawrence Lessig, who's he's the founder of Creative Commons. So we would kind of like to have some screenings when they are there, so that it's an event for the audience as well. But kind of my holy grail for it would be that the film would change slightly depending on which city it's in. So if you were in Pittsburgh and you had contributed footage that might not show up if it was in LA or something like that, that there would be that imprint of you there at the film screening. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull that off depending on how technology and my edit suite goes, but that would be definitely one thing we'd want to do. And I think I'm really kind of curious as to mobile phones. Coincidentally, it's much better down here for mobile than it is in Canada. We don't have data, basically. It's just prohibitively expensive. But I think one of the things that I want to do with the site is that I think it'll begin to morph into more of a social network site. I mean, it is to a certain extent. You have profiles and things like that. That's Arin's playing with it a bit there. But what I'd like is that there's community built around the remixes, so that if you have a remix or a piece of footage and somebody uses it or changes it, you'd be notified on your phone, and then you could watch that on your phone, and then that is able to be leveraged into when there's a theatrical release, like, hey, here's the video that's going to be in the movie when you're in Pittsburgh tonight. Be there. Go. That kind of thing. I think I'm in sort of a different position than what you guys are in, because I don't necessarily have all of the distribution leeway that I would like. The distribution rights for my film are actually owned by the people of Canada through the National Film Board, which is a monolithic organization. Okay, none of them are here. It's a bit like, it's a bit hard for them to grapple with some of the ideas, like giving it away is not one that they're super hot about. But I mean, I think that they get that, and they've seen the website, and they get giving away certain parts of it. But I think it'll take some convincing. But like they're our sales agent, so when the different territories take their different distributors, we have one in Canada, but down here, I'm not so sure that's going to shake out, or overseas. But I really want to be able to make sure that I can do some of that innovative stuff, because I think it'll win for both sides. Like, I really like the idea of the theater locator, like being able to vote on, yes, I like this film and I'd like to see it. I don't know why distributors
you don't need their authorization to do that.
I guess I don't know.
I mean, you already have profiles. Do you ask for people's zip codes when they're joining?
No. Their email addresses, I should probably do that. At the end of the film, you can click something, or you can do something, or there could be a big flash mob that everybody goes to at the end.
The text messaging even just going on here.
Yeah, like what you did, Lance, with the remixing stuff.
No, I think there's tons of opportunities. I think if you look at social media, you look what's going on, you look at Web 2.0, there's a lot of things that people are doing that are increasing communication between people. And I think for filmmakers, they can kind of look towards that and maybe start to borrow some of those things, as silly as they seem, maybe like people texting onto a screen. But that communication, if you really want to have that conversation, there's a lot of free things that you can actually make use of. I wanted to open it up to questions to see if anybody in the audience had any questions for our panelists today.
We have a few questions that haven't been addressed up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one are we up to? 20?
Well, 20. Will there be a point in the future when theatrical distribution is not necessary for a film to be a success and or profitable?
Yeah.
I think, I personally think that all this talk about digital starts to sound like we're just attacking theatrical. But obviously we went through a lot of trouble to have a theatrical release to our film. And in the end, of course, it was like cutting butter to release it on the internet compared to the difficulty of pulling off the theatrical. But see, I blame that difficulty on the system. I think that there could be an infrastructure that was just as easy as distributing the film on the internet, where you upload once, you publish it, and then any of the theaters that have enough demand based on people sharing, the information about films they would like to see, it all just sort of gets routed sort of like air traffic control. Where it's like, we need a little bit of more screenings over here. We need a little bit like this, because with digital screenings, it could be that dynamic, and so something might only ever screen just once or twice, but that's still theatrical.
Yeah, I don't see I agree that theatrical won't be necessary, but I think that it will continue to be a medium in which to watch films because people want to watch films that way.
Or watch Rocketboom that way. Or Dig Nation, they do screenings of their video podcast in theaters, like where a bunch of people come and drink beer and throw popcorn at each other, and they watch this tech show kind of thing about what's going on with the internet and all these little news stories. And it's just two guys sitting on a couch for 50 minutes, and they're watching that in a movie theater. Or how about a soccer game, a bunch of soccer moms wanting to put something on. Or how about a movie that's made in Zimbabwe by a 12-year-old who's actually a genius or something like that, and it blows up on YouTube, but the blow up on YouTube is just one step away from actually making it to theaters and potentially on-demand DVD printing services and all kinds of stuff that can function the way we're already seeing is the sort of consumer habit, if you want to call it that, of the way people, control the screens in their lives, like their computer screen, their TV screen, and eventually the theatrical screen.
Well, you've definitely seen that with television in terms of the way that people, have embraced DVRs, TiVo, what have you. The idea of on demand is a huge issue, and people are really into that. But I should actually since we're here and we're in a communal space, I should let anybody that has a question ask as opposed to just texting it on the screen. So if anybody has a question that they would like to ask, we definitely like to answer them.
Could you talk a bit about the Spout deal, please? Like, what was in it for Spout to do that for you, and how did you convince them to throw in $1 every time?
Spout is, most of these sites that are like for social networking, they benefit when they have a lot of users. So for them, it was beneficial because they want to have a lot of users. That makes their site more valuable. We had known them for a couple years because we'd met them on the film festival circuit before their site was actually up and running. So they're actually somebody we'd had a relationship for a while, and when we knew we were going to be on YouTube, we discussed with them the possibility of them sponsoring it somehow, and us giving them, some sort of advertisement. And they came up with the idea of the $1. So we were kind of like blown out of the water when they suggested that.
And it all came together like a week beforehand. And the other aspect of that relationship is that we're also content partners with YouTube, as is Rocketboom, which, that's right, you guys?
Like a rev share for advertising?
Yeah. So we got invited to basically have a special YouTube account where when there are banners on the page, we see some revenue through that. So the question is, though, who's buying those banners? Typically, banners on the internet go for very little, unless you can come up with some kind of sales pitch to get a little bit more money for those banners. And so that's what YouTube was interested in doing, because it's an entire film. They knew that blogs were going to write about the first feature film being on YouTube. So they were asking us, what do you guys think? Who should we get to buy those banners? So it started as a conversation about that. And from that, I think we've pulled in somewhere around $5,000. So that's in addition to when we get $1 when people join. But yeah, so just kind of the last few days before the film was going to publish, we were trying to think of what else we could do, like to talk about Spout at the intro, because otherwise it's like, why would we talk about it? It's just the banners on the page. But they were like, you should really, plug it at the intro, and we'll give you guys $1 per sign up. So
how did they know that it was from you? From the
it's spout.com/4-eyed monsters.
Okay.
And if people go to spout.com, there's a little thing that says, are you looking for 4-eyed monsters? So a lot of people probably join that, don't follow the instructions, but it's fine,
I think what that brings a good point to for anybody that's in the room and is trying to figure out ways that maybe they can go and find promotional sponsors for their own work. Sometimes there's windows of opportunity that come up thanks to new technology or social domains like Spout. So I think a lot of the time, if you just spend some time looking at what's going on with the Web 2.0 sector, or just do a little thought around what type of outlets you might be able to combine efforts with, you'll find that if you go in with a good pitch, a lot of the times they will be responsive. Sometimes it's not for money, sometimes it's just for promotion, but you might be fortunate like the way these guys were, and maybe one day somebody will come to you and offer you $1 per. But I think you can find some of those answers, so it's not necessarily just a one-time thing.
Yeah, I know. It seems like we got lucky, which, I think we did, but I think ultimately sponsorships in general are a great idea.
Yeah, and speaking of sponsorships, if you look at our net revenue here, the majority of it comes from sponsorships because we've had multiple sponsors throughout the process. But essentially, all the things at the top are DVDs, merchandise, theatrical, and YouTube banners, and the rest of the thing is basically coming up with some kind of arrangement with somebody that we're going to sponsor.
And that's $73,214 in sponsorship.
Yeah, in sponsorship money so far.
Does anybody have any questions?
Does YouTube have any rights to your film?
Well, as Andrew was talking about earlier, when you upload videos, there's an end license agreement, and it's all retractable. So it's pretty standard. I think they even copy and paste each other's, whether you upload to MySpace or Rever or YouTube. They all say pretty much the same thing, which is that we have a non-exclusive ability to display and redistribute your film across a variety of, technologies and platforms. But it is retractable. So if we take it off, they have to slowly propagate their servers to no longer have that. So there might be a delay, but they would take it off. Not to mention, there is a private button too. We could instantly turn the video private, keep it there, keep all the views and comments. If we needed to, release in a retail environment, take the film unprivate later. So it could be gone for a while and then back, like it was never, any.
And it wouldn't break all the links of where.
Yeah, it wouldn't break all the links. It would just say this video is currently set to private when people went to watch it, which would be unfortunate. We're not necessarily planning on doing that, but we could. Because, you mentioned kind of wanting to stay flexible. If something big comes along, you want to be able to adapt to that. So we have that control over our YouTube accounts and our various video accounts.
Mr. Kirshner.
What's your experience been with B-Side, where you sell the download version of Four-Eyed Monsters? Are there buyers there at B-Side? And have you had any luck in talking to iTunes, which it seems like is the site where lots of buyers already are purchasing movies?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, it's been great with B-Side because they're so customizable. This is our store that we designed. These buy buttons go actually to their Yahoo store that B-Side built for us. So people can buy just a $3 download which works on an iPod, or an $8 download, which is the full quality of the movie, and that works on Apple TV or just on your computer. Or they can get the $15 DVD. Now, when you get the DVD, you also get the iPod and the Apple TV version, because we're adopting this idea that B-Side came up with, which is that if somebody has bought your film, they deserve to have it on multiple formats. They shouldn't have to buy it again. So we're doing that on our site. Now, moving beyond our site and moving to environments that have what are essentially are like you're saying, foot traffic. It's like being in a Virgin Megastore where people are going to walk through there and be looking on the shelves at what's there. iTunes is an environment like that. So we feel like we can compromise some of our digital rights management beliefs where we don't have any DRM and all that. And yeah, we're looking into ways to go to iTunes, Xbox, and beyond, all kinds of download platforms that are emerging. But we are glad, though, that we first sold in a better environment to our audience directly the downloads that we think are going to give them the best user experience. But yeah, if some of these other platforms have traffic and people see it in there and they want to buy it, we want it to be available in any way possible.
I was also just curious if you had any luck talking to iTunes, because they seem to be really resistant to working with indie filmmakers, and yet I keep hearing that everyone's on the verge of doing a deal with iTunes.
Well, the thing about iTunes is that you have to become an iTunes aggregator. And so usually record labels or distribution companies have enough content they're putting out to become an aggregator. So as a filmmaker, it's hard to directly sell your film in iTunes. Instead, you need to go through an aggregator of aggregators. And they're out there, and one is Media Style, and they're a very interesting company doing a lot of cool things, and we've been talking with them.
Well, what's interesting about that too is it follows exactly the traditional model, which requires, if you want to get into retail or rental, you need to go through an intermediary. So it's the same exact thing that they're setting up for digital rights.
But with the way smaller percentages being taken out by the middlemen.
Yeah.
Because there's no overhead, it's just digital passing of files.
But that also depends on the deal that you sign to.
It does depend a lot, yeah.
Because the record deals were similar. They were similar to what a seat, like the split was similar to what you get on a
Yeah.
CD, so I
it
hope they're
depends though, because if you're going through a record label that then is going through a redistributor, that then is getting it into iTunes, there has been stuff in the media even lately about how, musicians sometimes are getting less off of digital download sales than off of CD sales.
But the indies get a better split.
The numbers we're looking at don't look like that at all for selling the film.
Yes.
Not having seen the film, I'm curious, when you made the movie, did you go through the whole thing of LLC and production insurance and all that sort of, official corporate stuff, or was it strictly a seat of the pants, let's make a movie?
Well, the production was seat of the pants. We didn't get any licenses or permits or anything like that when we were shooting it. And we didn't actually form an LLC until we started getting into film festivals. Because then the concept of maybe actually selling the film for, distribution, that was when we decided to form a company. But yeah, in terms of the actual production, it was run and gun, the entire thing.
It probably makes sense to do that if you intend to sell it at any point, because anytime you go to license something, they always want a holding company that they can deal the deal with. They won't do it with you individually. So, any other questions before we convene for the evening?
Ladies and gentlemen, this terminates our discussion of consumer viewer habits. Please thank our panel for their participation in this event. Thank you.